Yes, hello, and welcome to my presentation, the FAIRplus project, Fair Put into Practice. So my name is Jolanda Strubel. I'm from the Hive, the Netherlands. And during my presentation, I will first give you a short introduction to the Hive, then very briefly principles and the FAIR landscape, and then I will dive into detail on the FAIRplus project. And within that project, there are several things we're developing, and I will be talking about the verification process, the dataset maturity model, the FAIR cookbook, and the IMED Data Catalog. So the Hive, we're an SME and we're an IT company, and we enable open science by developing and implementing open source solutions and verifying data in life sciences. And we are involved in quite a number of projects and software development. So we've got some national health data networks. We've worked with some of these in the past, and some of them we're still working with. We've worked with Genomics England, but for instance, also in the pre-competitive health data projects, we're currently involved in a number, amongst which Eden and FAIRplus, about which I'm going to talk about later. We're a partner in partner communities such as the Specialises Alliance, FAIR, and we also work and develop open source software. So during this Festival of Genomics, there will be presentations of my colleagues about BioPortal and open targets. We've also developed our own FAIR a tool called Fairspace. So just really shortly about FAIR, I kind of assume that you heard all about this already somewhere. So originally this was thought up in an article, written down in an article in 2016. You see the link here at the bottom. You can also find these slides, all these links that are in this presentation, in our virtual booth in the environment. And there will also be a link to SlideShare, where you can also find the slides and just click these links. So these are the principles, and if you'd like to know more about these specifically, you can also go to the GoFair website, where they are explained in detail. And this was the beginning in 2016, and since then a lot of initiatives have been going on, started up. This is just a small sample of what is out there on FAIR. There's a few big ones, of course, to GoFair, and one of the initiatives, projects, is FAIRplus, and I'd like to talk to you about that in detail now. And also I'd like to point out the Specialises Alliance, who have a FAIR toolkit. So yeah, just looking at this, where to start? Even if you're new, or if you're already working on FAIR and trying to make your data more fair, just starting out, I think that FAIRplus is a good point to start trying to put all of this in practice and find tools. So on to the FAIRplus project. So the main goal of FAIRplus is to develop tools and guidelines for making life science data fair. There's a link to the official website, and it's an IMI project. IMI stands for Innovative Medicines Initiative, which is a European public-private partnership which funds health research and innovation. And so far they have been funding up to 182 projects. IMI will stop as of, I think this year already, and it will become IHI, but the philosophy will stay the same. And the money for this comes from the European Union, together with federated pharmaceutical companies and associations, which are together in the FPA. And Within FAIRplus, that's a consortium project of 22 partners, and we have academic partners, pharmaceutical companies, but also 3 SMEs, amongst which the Hive, which I'm looking at. And it started in January 2019, and it will end December this year. So next to the main goal, there are also these more specific aims and deliverables. And I'm not going to talk about all of them, but I will focus on the ones in orange. So I'll be talking about the development of a verification toolkit, which consists of the FAIR cookbook and the FAIRplus maturity model. And this toolkit will then be used to verify IMI projects and datasets and FPA datasets. And one of the other goals of the project is actually to verify 20 IMI datasets by the end of the project. And verification in this way is applying the actual toolkit, the cookbook and the maturity model. And I will also talk about the IMED Data Catalog. So like I said, there are 182 projects. We need to, IMED projects, and we need to have 20 by the end, going through the whole verification process. And currently there are 24 selected and contacted, and not all of the 180 were eligible to begin with. We had a whole prioritization process for that. So 24 are contacted and in a certain stage of verification, and 8 have in the meantime been completely verified. Let's call it that. So while working with these projects, we work in small teams, and we came up with a way of working to just help these projects make their data more fair, and I'd like to present this to you. So the verification process within FAIRplus looks like this, and this is not just specific for IMI or for FAIRplus, it's pretty generic. So I think it's a useful way of thinking about how to tackle verification of a data set. So I will go into these steps one by one now. So first and foremost, one of the important steps is, what is your verification goal? And just doing fair, make my data more fair, is just not enough. You just need to think, what does your data need to do for you? What would help you in the project? What would be a good improvement of your data within your project? So not just making it more fair, but what is really useful in your project, in your data set. So we do that together with these IMI projects and sit down with the data owner, and what would you like from this process? And the next step is then go deep into, what do you have at the moment, this project examination, write all of that down. What would you like? What do you envision as a ideal state, for instance, with ontologies or repositories? What are you thinking of? So really in detail examine what is already there and what would be the ideal state. If you've got that, we go into the next phase, which is actually a circle, so a cycle. So how we work in FAIRplus is in these release cycles of 3 months with small teams, and each team has a project. And you start with assessing the FAIR level at the beginning. I will go into detail how we do that later on. And then you look at, we've got a cookbook with recipes. If you look at what actions are needed, so you start writing down actions that you need to do to go to the goal. And as we only got 3 months, we also don't take all the goals, but really look what could we tackle in 3 months and decide on that. That's why this is a circle. You could have more than one circle to cover everything. So you look at the actions you want to take. If there's already a recipe in the cookbook, if not, then you have to find out how to do stuff and later write those down. Then actually do the work. And after you've done all that you decided on for that cycle, you do another assessment. And if all went well, your score will be higher than what you started out with. And that's kind of a way of measuring, like, I really improved the fairness of my data set, but I'll come back to that later. And then when you decide together with the data owner, this is enough, there is the post verification review, and you just assess, like, did we really achieve the goals we set out to? Sometimes you can get lost in details while you're working on something, and you will also disseminate the learning. So write down the actions that did not have a recipe as yet. And another thing that we do is add the verification results to the IMED Data Catalog, and I will also show you that later on. So back to the FAIR level assessment. One of the goals of the project as well was to set up our own maturity model and link to that our own indicators, but that was being developed, so we needed something to actually use in practice, and we tried some things, some systems, but we finally decided on the RDA indicators. So RDA stands for Research Data Alliance, and they developed these indicators to assess adherence to the FAIR principles, the one I showed you before. And the indicators they set up, they are actually designed for this. So what we're doing with them to reuse in an evaluation approach. If you're interested, this is a link to all the details on all these indicators and how to use them. So it's really a list of questions based on the principles. It's a manual assessment. Just go through the list and answer them. It's all yes/no questions. And what you need is a file with all those questions, and just putting space for the answers to the question for the data sets you're assessing, and document it. And what you also need is somebody who has detailed knowledge of the data set or the database or the project, whatever you're assessing. That's really crucial because the level of questioning is really very detailed. So we did that for a number of IMI projects, as you can see here at the bottom. The white bars are before and the blue ones are after, so some start really low with scores and others are a bit higher, but most of them are increased after verification. And what we found with these RDA indicators, that it's not straightforward. We have had long discussions on what does this indicator actually mean. So it's not objective, but on the other hand, it is a good starting point to get an idea of how fair your data are, or how your data set is. And what we also found is, while going through these indicators, that data set owners or project managers were starting to think like, oh, this is also possible. And so it can also bring up new improvement areas that they did not think about before and which are achievable within a certain amount of time and would really help a project. So that's also useful. So so the data set maturity model, like I said, we've also been developing this, and it's still in development. It's still not mature as yet. So the team working on this actually took the RDA indicators and also the FAIR indicators and just reordered them and reclassified them. And what they came up with in the end are 3 dimensions of FAIR. So this is really a simplification and summarizing of the indicators I mentioned. And so they came up with 3 dimension, content related, representation and format, and hosting environment capabilities. And they also came up with 5 levels. So almost every data set is in level 0, which is no potential for reuse beyond lifetime of research project. So most data sets will be in a higher level than the 0. And 5 is like the enterprise level. That's the maximum you can do with your data and the management around the metadata and such things. And they made a matrix out of this where the gray boxes will contain indicator questions. So you can answer those questions and see in which level you are with a certain data set. And like I said, this is still in development. We're also trying this out at the moment within our verification of the IMI projects we're working on. So at some point we will use this as our FAIR level assessment. And the FAIR cookbook. I've already mentioned something about recipes, and the recipes are of course in the cookbook. So what is the FAIR cookbook? It's an online live resource which is still being developed and still growing, and it's a collection of recipes, and the recipes cover like operational steps of FAIR management, FAIR data management. And who is this cookbook for? Well, it's for anyone. So there are very different types of recipes in there. There's some very technical ones, but also there's educational material, so more general on FAIR. And it, like I said, it's been developed within the verification of the IMI projects, but also working together with FPR partners who've also been writing recipes for the cookbook, and also persons from the Elixir consortium. And just to make sure that it's clear that it's really anyone who can have benefit from the cookbook. So from researchers to policymakers, even trainers. And the type of questions you can answer using the book would be like, how can I handle data access? How do I choose a license? But there are also so-called exemplar verification recipes in which the whole experience of the verification of a project is described. And yeah, that's more like a verification story kind of recipe. At the moment, there are in total 46 recipes in the cookbook. The link is again here at the bottom. And the chapters are like findability, accessibility, interoperability, reusability from the FAIR letters, but also infrastructure and assessment and the applied examples. So that's the experience recipes I mentioned already. And one of the main concerns with the cookbook was that, well, FAIRplus will end by the end of this year in December. How to sustain this after the project, which is a big problem for most projects, how to sustain the things you developed after the project ends. And recently we have made a big step in that Elixir. It's now an Elixir subdomain. So that means that Elixir is ensuring that it will be kept alive and will be developed after the FAIRplus ends with the help of different Elixir nodes. And it's also now listed in the IMI guidelines, which is also a sign that IMI and in future IHI will has this as an important resource that they really think is important to keep going. So sustainability of the cookbook is almost safe. Let's say, well, at least for the few years after the end of the project. And then finally the IMED Data Catalog. So what is the IMED Data Catalog? It centralizes the metadata of IMED projects, not just that, also for other translational research data sets. So it already started in 2016, and back then it was a joint effort by IMED Itrix, which was a consortium project, and Elixir Luxembourg. And since the start of FAIRplus, we've also been working within FAIRplus on this. And at the moment, there are 355 projects in there and 207 datasets, and it includes 168 IMI projects, which is really a lot because there are only 182. So most of them are in there. And again, here is a link to go and see for yourself. So if you go there, this is a dataset view of one of the IMI projects that we verified within FAIRplus. So at the top you see access to the data, if possible. It's not for every project that's possible to give access. The link to the project and study view within the database. At the top there's a badge to show that this one has gone through verification. And if you go to the project link here, you will see there that the summary of the FAIR the results from the verification. Like I mentioned, that at the end of the verification, you put it in here to share, and you also have a lot of fields with which are contain metadata, which are linked to ontologies, and you can also download these metadata in the catalog. So you go take a look. So just an overview of the links and just additional reading. So this is what I wanted to present to you, and I hope that this presentation will give you a starting point, even if you're already working with verifying data, to have some tools and some guidance on how to making your data more fair in practice. And last but not least, I would like to thank some of my colleagues who helped out with the slides. So that's Danielle Welter from Luxembourg University. She works on the IMED Data Catalog. Ibrahim Imam, who is leading the maturity model work, and Philippe Rocasera, who is leading the cookbook work. So that was my presentation. If there are any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. Question. What do you think is the most exciting aspect of the FAIRplus project? The whole thing of putting it into practice. Like there's so much ideas about this, and FAIR is just so big, and there's so much involved in it. I think it's really nice that somebody's trying to make it, how do I say it, give an overview and just give some help in how to actually start something like this. And that's the most exciting part. I think. Just write it down and just make it findable, always nice. And I think that's the most exciting aspect. And there's another question. What step can university students take to already start incorporating FAIR principles into our work? Maybe we don't get to level 5, but at least level 2 as a student. So I'm then assuming that you're working on a project where you're creating data, right? And when you're doing that, you're maybe part of a bigger project, but I always found, I've also done some research, and it's nice to know that your data is, of course, from your own article, but that other people in the same field could also benefit from it. So if that's possible within your project, maybe already share. You've got all these repositories out there for all kinds of different types of data, and maybe see if you can already share it there or within your university, or just getting in touch maybe with researchers that are in the same field from other universities. So, but that also depends, of course, on how far you can share data with others. Um, yeah, and that's of course one of the starting points. As a student, it's yeah, well, is it your data that's maybe more difficult as a student? That you've also got the university and your possible, I must say, the person's leading a project you're in. So, um, yeah, and level 5 is just really, that's like a high level. That's um, not even very big companies are there. That's just really the holy grail of FAIR, I would think. Yeah, so I hope, yeah, just the sharing of your data and making people aware what you're doing and maybe cooperate on your data field. So, yeah, I hope that um, answers your questions. And if not, don't hesitate to contact me. And I'm always glad to talk about FAIR. So, yeah, don't hesitate to contact me if you'd like to know more. So that was it, right? 2 questions. Yeah. Great. So I don't know. The link was put in the link to the slide share was put in the chat. I cannot see that. Yeah, just go there if you'd like to see all the resources I've shown. And like I said, it's also in the virtual booth in the whole event environment. If you go to the Hive, um, you can see these slides and just click on the links. Yeah, so that was my time. So enjoy the festival and all the other talks. And like I said, just contact me. Like talk more about what I presented.